Welcome to the Dr. Jim Cares podcast with Dr. James Augustine, where we provide powerful solutions for helping you create wellness. The following discussion is for educational purposes only and is not meant to diagnose or treat disease. Because our approach is individualized, it's important to not apply this information without first consulting with your healthcare professional. And now, here's Dr. Jim.
Hey, welcome back to the Dr. Jim Cares podcast. My name is Dr. Augustine from Ahead to Wellness, and today we're going to be talking about what's coming up, which would be New Year's resolutions with regards to diet, losing body fat, and being the healthiest that you can possibly be. So we're going to talk about diet. Let's start off in this spot of nutrition and what you put into your mouth. Maybe we shouldn't call it a diet because so many people out there think that you do this crash diet, you change and you suffer and torture yourself with just drinking water and eating grass for about 3 weeks to a month, and then you go back, you lose all the body fat, which really wouldn't work with that, but you lose all the body fat and then you go back to the same way of eating that once started and created the whole problem in the first place. And that's supposed to help? Not really. Ideally, we'd want it to be permanent. We'd want your results to ultimately be permanent. So let's talk about some of the fallacies in diet and what we eat versus the truth. Now, how do I know it's the truth? And is this just my opinion? Not necessarily, because the science shows it, is beginning to show it more and more, as well as when we do NC patients, we actually do blood work, comprehensive blood work before as well as after, and we see such amazing, consistent changes as long as the person really agrees and does what they should do. So let's talk about this. First and foremost, the problems with our diet, the worst, if you want to say, way of eating that's available is our standard American diet. And since the holidays come around and then every other month there's a reason to celebrate and eat bad food, and it's just that one day, it's going to be okay. And certainly that could be if in fact you're really stuck to the correct way of eating. The correct way meaning the way that's going to become fat burning, optimal brain health, low, if not no inflammation practically in your body, and optimal energy. Wouldn't that be great? You sleep well, everything feels and functions fabulously. Men has higher testosterone, levels come up to a normal range. Ladies, their hormones balance as well. Things are amazing. That's the way ultimately you'd like to have it. So the problems currently in our diet would be our standard American diet, also known as the SAD diet, not a good thing. And it's that food pyramid nonsense where the bottom or base of the food pyramid is carbs, starch, and sugar. It's fruits and vegetables. The next level up, which is a smaller portion of that same pyramid, is protein. And then, of course, at the very top, the least and the smallest amount in your diet should be fat, because fat, and this is complete fallacy, eating fat makes you fat. Eating fat clogs your arteries and causes heart disease, and it's just not true. So if we could take this food pyramid and flip it upside down, and the base of what you eat mostly is good essential fats and really great proteins, and at the very tip top of it is hardly any carbohydrate or starch and sugar at all, that would be better, much, much, much better. We'd see a revolution in this country as far as health is concerned. Because the ultimate problem, really, if you look at statistics, still the number one killer is heart disease. And back in the 50s, since that wonderful doctor came up with the research on saturated fat, who then misinterpreted the research and says that we should eliminate saturated fat and substitute that for polyunsaturated fats. That will help us. The saturated fat's bad, when in fact it's not. It's actually essential. It's really wonderful. And there are some people out there, there's some YouTube channels that are really cool that really are eating. Imagine eating an entire stick of butter. Eat, just literally, get a spoon and a stick of butter and you eat this thing. And so the way that I like to recommend people doing this, if they want to start out doing this, because the reason that you want this is because fats are essential. proteins, amino acids, or essential amino acids, essential fatty acids. And the reason that you want to do this is because it's healthy for you. Imagine giving your body what it needs. Your brain is over 60% fat. Your heart, the number one fuel for optimal heart function, is fat. And yet it's been evil forever since the 1950s. So kind of a big problem there. So then how should you eat if the standard American diet's bad? Another thing that I would also throw in there that's bad, and I'm probably going to get some hate for this, but it's true, and the science is proving it, is the plant-based diet. The plant-based diet is not great. And this is from 35 years of experience with patients who just never seem to get where they want to be. They do not get rid of that chronic gut inflammation and irritable bowel and ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, things of those nature, really terrible problems that can develop for people, just doesn't seem to go away. And then the plant-based diet, it seems to be the big rage. And yes, there's nutrition in the plant-based diet, but the problem is the plant toxins. Do a Google search and type in plant toxins, and you come up with all sorts of current scientific research demonstrating all the plant toxins. A few of them can be oxalates and phthalates. There's a ton of them in the nightshades. Nightshades, tomato, potato, eggplant, also tobacco for those of you that smoke out there, right? It's considered a nightshade. So those things are problematic mostly because of the plant toxins. Imagine that these plants were created with toxins in them so that bugs, pests, as well as animals do not eat plants, and therefore, because what happens is the plant toxins create gut inflammation and problems in your digestive tract. Now, for human beings, the common thing people will say, well, gosh, if I eat broccoli, oh my goodness, I get so much gas and bloating, and it's terrible. Well, guess why? It's because of those darn plant toxins. There's a great doctor out there that I love on YouTube. His name is Anthony Chaffee. He's an MD, wonderful guy. Type it in, look it up. Plants are trying to kill you. Really interesting and wonderful doctor, but also his channel is great too, and that's one of the videos that he does, but it again demonstrates the science behind it all, which is awesome. Because truly, if you take the plant-based diet out of the picture, as well as the standard American diet, and you start to look at the ketogenic diet, which is lots of good essential fats, certainly good proteins, and extremely low in carbs, that's good. But the next subdivision of keto is, I think, even better because you do not have inflammation with a carnivore diet. Carnivore is probably the best way of eating. And people will say, well, oh my gosh, there's no variety and I can't sustain it. When I'll give you, again, talking about Dr. Anthony Chaffee, this guy's been carnivore for like 25 years. And it is literally animal protein, animal fat, salt, electrolytes, and water. And you're thinking, wow, that sounds kind of boring. And the men out there say, oh my goodness, that sounds great. I can have bacon and eggs and, tri-tip and ribeye steaks. That sounds fabulous. And it is for a time, but moving and progressing in that direction to get there. Because your diet, the way that you eat, let's take the word diet out of it, the way that you eat is so critical. All the patients that I've seen, every last one of them, and my practice is primarily chronic illness. So I see cancer, autoimmune disease, diabetes, obesity, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, all sorts of those things. And every last person has a problem with the way that they eat. Every one of them. And if this doctor in the 50s, who was correct, that if we change from saturated fat over to polyunsaturated fats, basically lower fat diet, why is heart disease still the number one killer today? That's kind of a problem. I think it's a big problem. And the crux of it, for those of you that may know this, the crux of it is starch and sugar, because blood sugar spikes and Here's the real crux. Every chronic illness, these terrible things that we're talking about, has an insulin spike. Hyperinsulinemia is the problem. What brings up insulin, you might ask? Well, it's starch, sugar, and we can also throw alcohol into the mix as well. Spikes your insulin. We can also say fruit. People say, well, but fruit is, wonderful, great nutrition in it, and it's natural sugar. Really, natural sugar spikes your blood sugar and insulin just like table sugar does. Not much difference. Matter of fact, I'm actually more concerned about fructose, the fruit sugar, because it's more problematic because it's 10 times more sticky than glucose, meaning it glycates, it sticks to proteins and fats way more than glucose does. It's just the problem right now is they don't have a way to measure fructose in blood sugar testing right now. In blood testing right now. They don't have a way to test fructose in that sense to really know what it's doing. But when you look at this thing, you might want to type this and do a Google search for advanced glycation, glycation, glycation end products, also known as AGEs, advanced glycation end products. Do a search for that, and what you'll find is this glycation process creates this sludge, this plaque that you can end up with in your heart and blood vessels, but also in your eyes as cataracts, but also in your brain as amyloid plaques, hence moving a person towards Alzheimer's disease. Some doctors out there have called that type 3 diabetes. So we do not want plaque in these bad places. We don't want bad plaque anywhere, and fructose has a tendency to do more of that. The science is still forthcoming, but the research scientists that are doing this research is definitely saying that fructose is too sticky. It's very, very sticky, and be very cautious with it. There are doctors out there that I highly respect that recommend using and actually eating honey and fruit as part of the carnivore diet. I'm not thinking this is a good thing because of the stickiness of fructose, of the fruit sugar. So with that, carnivore, how do you get from a high carb diet, starch and sugar, like one of my favorite foods, by the way, just to let you know that it's probably my favorite, would be Mexican food. Absolutely love Mexican food. However, I don't eat it anymore because I do not want these problems of body fat, starch sugar, blood sugar spiking, insulin problems, and then ultimately therefore heart disease. See, there's this condition that's called prediabetes, insulin resistance. Well, as long as you're not diabetic, that's okay. It's not okay. You're still doing damage. Based on all the testing that we've done, you're still doing damage to heart and blood vessels with even being pre-diabetic. But then again, full-blown diabetes, especially for many, many years, you've done some significant damage to your heart and blood vessels, and that's the biggest problem for blood sugar issues, is it causes heart disease. We don't want that. What should you do if you're maniacally addicted to starch and sugar and you really want to make a transition towards that January 1st and like, okay, my New Year's resolution? How do you really do that? Number one, you have to realize that to truly get results of any kind that are great, critical is discipline. Discipline. Now, what does it take you? And this is some things to maybe brainstorm during the holiday season. Brainstorm on what is it going to take for you to get that level of discipline to stick with this, not for 3 weeks, not for a week, not for 6 months, but like now from now on. What's it going to take? Let me tell you, the sad part about that is my most compliant patients are cancer patients, which is terrible, but it's true. People, when they get to that end of things and their back's right up against the wall and they're about to die because of this cancer, they're very compliant. They will change their diet. They will take nutrition. They will do whatever it takes to really get out of that hole that they're in. But it shouldn't be that way for us. We should just be able to figure this out. And please take some time to say, okay, what can give me the level of discipline to get to that point? And there might be some really good questions that come up and that might come up, and you might say, well, I don't think I can stick to this because I love X, Y, and Z food. How can I can't even see myself giving that up. Well, in light of the fact that where everybody's headed, number one killer is still heart disease, and cancer is right there close to it as well. And what happens, and you've all probably know this, is that what feeds cancer cells is sugar. Sugar feeds cancer cells. Hence, another reason to get rid of starch and sugar in our diet. So how do we do this? So start to write down these questions to then search and figure out answers and get answers to how are you going to really enhance your discipline. For some people, it's like, well, I found all this great science. I did a bunch of Google research and found a whole bunch of science that really is agreeing with what this doctor, me, Dr. Augustine, is saying, and therefore I'm good. That really helps me to really know that I need to change this stuff. Now, the other side of it, some people, here's another point number 2, some people really can't get their head around that they really believe that they can get the changes because they might be morbidly obese. They might be, 200 pounds overweight. And there's no way that they can get there. But let me tell you, you can throw a lot of money at this and spend lots of money, but I would first and foremost, start with moving towards a carnivore diet. And not everybody can do it cold turkey. Point number 3. Cold turkey is very rare. Not many people can actually flip the switch and tomorrow everything has changed. So that being said, now here's one of my major keys to really getting that sugar, starch, starving, craving, hungry for those things, addiction away, and it's actually introducing fat into your diet. One of I think the biggest and most significant things to do is organic peanut butter. Organic peanut butter is super tasty, unless you're allergic to it. Of course, that can be a problem out there with some people. But organic peanut butter is fat and salt, and that's it. And it is an essential, it's a fat, and it will immediately satisfy you. If you put a big tablespoon in your mouth, give it about 3 minutes, you're going to discover that, wow, I'm just not hungry anymore. I'm good. That, especially when you're starving, craving, hungry for something. You get home from work and you're starving, boom, do a major tablespoon of peanut butter. Now, is that on the carnivore diet? No, but it's a stepping stone towards it. Because one thing about peanut butter is it also is high in omega-6 fatty acids. Omega-6s, and in this country, ideally we should have an omega-6 to omega-3 ratio of 1-to-1, ideally. But the problem is, and this is the science, it says actually the average person is a 20-to-1 ratio, 20 omega-6s to 1 omega-3. Okay, I'm just saying this is a stepping stone. You don't want to stick with and stay with peanut butter, but putting in fat in your mouth is a fabulous thing to immediately satisfy you. There's a center in your brain, a satisfaction center for fat, but there is no satisfaction center for starch and sugar, none. So if you put fat in every time that you're starving, craving, hungry, you're going to start noticing, wow, I'm not hungry. And then it makes it so much easier to choose that food that's super good for you. Because imagine, you can maybe you might have one of those luxury cars that requires you to put premium gas in the tank. But why would you imagine if you wouldn't put sugar in your gas tank of your car because it would destroy the engine of your car? Why in the world would you put it into this engine? Because it's true, you put in great fuels into this body, and guess what? It functions so much better. Now, but there is a period of time where it's going to take you. It's a transition period going from where you're at now to that whole, man, I'm carnivore and I'm great. I'm fabulous. Everything is great. I'm getting such great results. My blood work, my body composition, my energy, my sleep, my mood, everything is moving in the right direction. It takes some time to get there. This is why we're talking this way and speaking about this transition period. How do you get there? And fat as a fuel is an amazing tool. Now, you could do what I do is sit down if you want to have a bedtime snack or snack before bed and you're hanging out. For me, I get a little plate and I get a pretty good sized chunk of grass-fed butter and a spoon. And I literally eat that. And to me, the way I visualize this, because it's so true, If you're going to have lobster tail, what comes with lobster tail? Typically a little cup of butter that's so yummy. You put that lobster, dip it in the butter, and oh, that taste is amazing. Well, imagine that without the lobster. It's the same thing. You're getting this salty butter that's so yummy and great for you. That's what I do. Some people say, oh, it's just so gross. And we've been so brainwashed to think that fat's so evil. And I go like, it just is terrible. It's not. Because think of a fat that's great, that you love. I mean, like peanut butter. So many people like peanut butter. And yeah, you could do almond butter. You could do a different type of butter, but make sure, and ideally, that's why I like going to a saturated fat, because it's so great. And the big deal with carnivore is ultimately you want to get to where you're doing only animal fat and animal protein. It's so amazing. Your body will transition and progressively produce better amounts of hydrochloric acid in your stomach to be able to break down those proteins from the animal protein that you're eating. And your first line of defense against gut infections, gastrointestinal infections, would be your stomach acid, where you're putting in all of this protein initially. So it starts to adapt to that extra amount of animal protein that's coming in. And guess what? Your stomach pH, the acidity of your stomach will get so low that there's not a bad bug that's going to get through into your small intestine to cause those gut issues that develop so commonly, so frequently. Because the other side of it is stress. I mean, stress also shuts down your digestive enzyme production. But I'm starting to get off on a tangent here, so let's come back to the diet side of things. So using fat is probably the most profound way to make that transition, going from, let's just say you're going to go from whatever diet you're doing now to the ketogenic diet. Ketogenic is great high fats, wonderful good fats. And there are, by the way, when I talk about fats, there are fats that you really want to avoid, such as the seed oils, vegetable oils. Bad. They oxidize quickly, and the oxidized fats actually damage our heart and blood vessels. They've done so much in the way of studies on this. Cadavers, people that have died from heart attacks and things like that, and they've done autopsies. They've discovered in the center of the plaque that's in their coronary arteries that supply their heart is oxidized seed oils. Not really good. Not a good thing. So you want to avoid canola oil. Bad. Canola oils from rapeseed, also not a good thing. Just the fact that it's from rapeseed, not a good word, not a good thing. Don't eat canola. Also, sunflower, safflower, vegetable oil, margarines, Crisco, bad stuff. You want to avoid those things. Another good transitionary oil that's pretty fair, is avocado oil, as well as olive oil, as well as coconut oil. These are better for you, better choices in that stepping stone towards using real butter. I mean, you can use real butter. You should use real butter to cook things in, such as eggs. Every morning, my breakfast is always bacon and eggs, or sausage and eggs, some kind of really good sausage and eggs. Lots of butter. Steaks, for instance, if you have a steak, cook the steak, get it just right, but then immediately when you bring it out, throw some slabs of butter on top to really make it super juicy and yummy. Because again, butter does not make you fat, clog your arteries. It's always been starch and sugar. Raising up that insulin. Insulin is a fat storing hormone to be able to put that sugar into your cells. The lower we can keep our insulin, blood sugar, of course, and inflammation, the slower we're going to wear our body out from inside out. Just remember that. So carnivore, ultimate thing to get to, so you can go wherever you're at now to a more ketogenic diet, start to remove those starches and sugars. And it is important. One of the most important things to remember, another point that's so essential, is the food that you're putting into your body is essential. And if you're putting in good things, your body will reward you for it. That's a really good thing to remember. Put in good fuels so that this thing, your body, works super well. And the more you do it, the better it's going to get. Now, Some people, like I said, some people might do that big overnight thing, that big switcheroo where they can do that cold turkey thing and everything is keto and then it's carnivore in an instant. Many men really love meat, so I totally understand that and that makes total sense. But I would prefer you make that transition kind of slowly, just so you can handle it, because you might have a family and realistically you're going to have a lot of other people looking at what you're doing. Carnivore ultimately is where you want to get to. The protein your body won't have a problem with. You'll be anti-inflammatory, your digestion will work, and there's so many doctors out there. Ken Berry is another fabulous doctor that I recommend that you look up on the internet. He has a whole playlist of how to do carnivore, the do's and don'ts, plus also the fallacies, the dangers he calls it, but they're really dispelling the myths behind carnivore. You can get all your nutrition in meat and organ meats, and there's nothing wrong with it whatsoever. And I hope all of this helps. And we're going to conclude this by saying that I hope you have a great holiday. And if you have any questions about this, please leave them in the comments. You can also call me on the phone, 562-860-3404. That's my office number. I'm also on email, draugustine@gmail.com is my email address. I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. I am on Facebook as well, but mostly on those other ones. I also do podcasts. This is going to be a video podcast, but I'm also going to be on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, so you can also follow me there. I hope this is helpful. Please leave me comments and questions. I'd love to help you out. And again, my name is Dr. Augustine from Ahead to Wellness. Can't even say the word. Ahead to Wellness. You have a great holiday, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye now.
Thanks for joining us on your journey to wellness. Join us next time for more information and education about your health. And feel free to contact Dr. Jim on social media or at his office, Ahead to Wellness in Buena Park, California.